Okay, so good morning, everyone. My name is Millie Garcia Serrano, and I serve as Bureau Assistant Commissioner for the Bureau for Site Cleanup. Thank you very much for coming this morning together to learn a little bit about what the Bureau for Site Cleanup has been up to since we last got together in November 2024. I hope that thus far you're having a great year, and we are here together to again talk a little bit about the current state of our Bureau for Site Cleanup program, in addition to bringing some content that's specific to ORS's work on TCE, as well as also robust conversation regarding the activity and use limitation guidance, which we envision going final very soon. So with that, I also want to remind you that this particular meeting is also being recorded. Today's meeting agenda, as I stated, is quite robust, but we will get through it within the next couple of hours that we will be collaborating together. So I, again, want to welcome you to this forum. Let's take a look at the agenda and make sure that we are good with all of the items that we have for today. Basically, I will be providing, as well as Diane Baxter, some administrative updates from the Bureau for Site Cleanup. In addition, we will also have David Foss talk a little bit about the Brownfields program update, mostly focusing on roundtables. Ms. Kathy Kiley is going to talk about some statisticals and data analytics associated with the Emergency Response Program, as well as MassDEP program. Also, we're happy to have Terry Wood providing us with an LSPA board report out. Likewise, Ms. Katie Kutzma is going to provide us with the LSP Association report out. As I also noted, Greg Braun from the Office of Research and Standards will be talking about TCE congenital heart defect review. And this item actually goes back to a 2023 request from the LSPA for MassDEP to review a body of work, scientific work associated with this particular endpoint. So we will be talking about this very specifically today. Also, as I stated, the activity use limitation AUL guidance, we are going to give you a summary of where we've been and where we are with an eye on finalization of this particular guidance. Ken Mara is going to provide us with a soil reuse policy update. This is very specific to COM 25. And last but not least, we will have a Q&A session as well as a wrap-up. And also, the next Waste Site Cleanup Advisory Committee meeting is posted for May 22nd, and I'm looking to the Advisory Committee to advise as to whether we move that insofar as it might be in conflict with the Memorial Day weekend. So with that, why don't we just advance to the next slide? Administrative updates. So I would like to talk to you a little bit about our efforts to, insofar as monitoring of federal funds. We've all seen the press. We've been talking and working with our counterparts across the state, as well as other nearby states, and across the state, across the nation, states that are also facing uncertainty regarding federal funds and portals opening and closing, etc. So to provide you with a short background, as you all know, a January 28th, 2025 OMB memorandum, together with various presidential executive orders, White House directives, and other agency actions, they've affected certain programs at MassDEP via general federal funds freeze. The Bureau for Site Cleanup has been affected by the recent freeze in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, IIJA funding. And these funding, the funding of two of the Bureau for Site Cleanup grants from the EPA had been subject to this freeze. Diane Baxter, our director of the Federal Programs Division, will talk a little bit more about these impacts. As reported in the press, Massachusetts, acting through the Attorney General, and other states have filed actions in federal court to stop the freeze. Rhode Island District Court issued a temporary restraining order lifting the freeze. If there's good news to be said, is that as of today, for our program, we understand that the funding of the affected Bureau for Site Cleanup grants, that funding has been reopened. It's a day-to-day basis situation. It's very fluid. We continue to check the portals. We continue to ensure that we are doing a good job monitoring these funding portals to ensure, again, that we have continuity in the work and the service that we need to provide through these funding sources. So the work is continuing. Our commitment to ensuring that we bring about the brownfields work is continuing, as well as Superfund. I'd like to turn it over to Diane, who will give you a little bit more specifics regarding the brownfields and the Superfund program and potential impacts and how we are managing these impacts. Diane.
Thanks, Millie. Yeah, as Millie mentioned, the Bureau has seen impacts from the federal freeze of infrastructure law funds. 2 of our grants were directly impacted, both brownfields grants from EPA that are designated, that we've designated for site-specific assessment and/or cleanup work at brownfield sites. The 2 affected grants are the CERCLA 128A Bipartisan Infrastructure Law Grant, which funds both assessment and cleanup actions. And the second is the Community-Wide Assessment Grant, which funds assessment only. As Millie noted, as of the end of the day yesterday, these grants were available. They're no longer frozen, or were no longer frozen at the end of the day yesterday. We're monitoring the grant status on both of those on a continuing basis. We're also monitoring the status of work at 2 Superfund sites where EPA is initiating remedial actions that are also funded by the infrastructure law. So we're keeping an eye on those as well.
That's my name on it.
And that's about it.
Okay. So again, we want to express that this is a very fluid situation. We are monitoring. If anyone has any questions, please contact me. We will get you the answer, but MassDEP is committed to stay on top of the funds process and especially the portals to ensure that they are open and we can transact on all fiscal aspects, whether it's paying bills, paying for work, and all that. So thank you. And again, just contact me if anyone has any questions. On the personnel front, we do have some good news. We're sad to see that George Garner, who was the former Technical and Financial Support Director, Division Director, he retired after an amazing career in 28 plus years of service. So far, so good. He left everybody with a lot of knowledge. Our team is running at full speed. And we continue to do our work, whether it's internal contracting, external engagement through all the contractors and all the work that actually happens through the auspices of the Technical and Financial Support Division. I'm happy to report that we are well underway in the hiring process. We've had interviews and we will be announcing the selected candidate soon, we hope. But just to again note that there is continuity in service here, so we should have a seamless operation as it pertains to providing support and response to, for example, imminent hazard conditions that the state is taking over to ensure that there is robust and protective response actions. So you will not see us sort of missing a beat when it comes to responding to imminent hazards and other important program endpoints. I also am happy to report that currently we have underway 3 positions. One of them actually came in as a late breaking news. So I'll start with the 2 remedial project management manager positions. These positions actually are situated within Diane Baxter's division. And these are the individuals that will be helping us with moving along all of the work that is directly connected with the oversight of complex site assessment and remediation projects at federal Superfund sites and or Department of Defense sites to ensure that the assessment and response actions meet the stated objectives. And basically it's just ensuring that the MCP is imparted along the way during these decision-making points during the life of a project. We are again in the process of evaluating incoming resumes and expressions of interest. And I just want to say that anyone who's interested in this particular position, please apply. We would love to see a robust list of candidates. I note that as part of the Mass Careers process, those that actually file their application, it should be received by March 5th. And there is full consideration for those individuals that actually apply within by 2/25. So those are the ones, the resumes that will actually be considered with full consideration. And again, late breaking news this morning, we learned that we had requested actually the ability to post a manager of the information and data management function here for the Bureau of Wayside Cleanup. I'm very excited and delighted that that request was approved and satisfied to our satisfaction. And we are currently seeking applicants for the position of an Administrator 6, Information and Data Management Chief for that particular section. This section is going to be housed within the Technical Financial Support Division. And as such, the selected candidate will be supervising a team that works with other MassDEP staff, not only in Boston, but also across the Commonwealth. And the idea here is to ensure that this particular person is the lead in information data management, tasked with coordinating all of the Bureau of Wayside Cleanup's data and information needs with the Mass IT, the Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, and the Executive Office of Technology Services and Security. So that's EOS. Mostly, again, working on EDEP, continuity, optimization, and improvements. Also ensuring that some of our enterprise projects, including the data portals that harken back to historical data universes, they are all coordinated and co-located in one location. So there's a lot of work that's involved, really exciting work, very important work, which we felt was important to have a manager of the information data for the site cleanup program. So first consideration again for applications received by 3/5/25. And we look forward to hopefully getting the word out through our social media and other channels to attract the very best candidates for this very important position. Let's see, at the podium. So I will be joined in by the Deputy Regional Directors and as well as Abigail Anderson and John Ziegler at an upcoming Environmental Business Council Symposium. And that will take place on March 4th. It's titled Meet the MassDEP Bureau of Wayside Cleanup, and we are excited to provide some content and support to this program. Attorney Cox, as well as Mr. Ed Bendoren from CDM Smith will be moderating. So again, thank you for the opportunity to work with EBC. In addition to that, MassDEP, the Bureau of Wayside Cleanup, will also be supporting the upcoming LSPA Environmental Symposium, and that's to be held on April 15th. So thank you to the LSPA for the invitation. Last but not least, we're staying the course on priorities. This is really something that we will be focusing on for calendar 2025. And we are working hand in hand with the regulated community as well as all the interested stakeholders to ensure that we can finalize a number of policies that are on the back burner, and we are bringing forth and putting some finality to that. Again, starting with finalization of the activity use limitation guidance document. We envision that being finalized by the end of this month. Also issuing a draft COM25 soils policy, and this is meant to be for public comment. Any day now, I promise you, this will be coming out. It's currently with the Commissioner's Office, and Ken Mara is going to be talking a little bit more about it. Likewise, working with John Ziegler and also coordinating with the other bureaus, particularly the Bureau of Water Resources and the Bureau of Air and Waste, in developing our PFAS-related policies with an eye on imminent hazards. Likewise, all the accompanying Q&As, we will be working to ensure that we share all this information and maybe devote a lot of time to this at our next advisory committee meeting. And last but not least, the risk assessment guidance, they've been split up into chapters, and we have been working with the LSPA and others in reviewing and making sure that they are moving along. So we are now turning our attention to finalizing the risk assessment guidance chapters so that we can actually get more comments from, again, the advisory committee as well as the general public. So we will be moving those along too. So those are sort of our priorities for now. And stay tuned as we continue to roll out work for review and comment. Next. Okay, so with that, I'd like to turn it over to David Foss, our Brownfields coordinator, and Kathy Kiley after David on the emergency response and MOSPRA updates. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you. Next slide, please, Abby. So we are continuing because there's changes afoot on the federal level. We don't have 100% guidance of where things are headed off into the next couple of fiscal years. We're continuing to share information about brownfields resources that are available, regardless of what comes out of Washington. And so one of the things we've been doing the last couple of years is having brownfields roundtables in all 4 quadrants of the state. And so this year we're tag teaming with the following regional planning commissions. So Franklin Regional Council of Governments in Greenfield. That will be our fall, early September. That brownfields roundtable is an opportunity to catch up with folks right before the EPA grant program starts. Usually the application period is from September to November, with the due date being right before Thanksgiving. So we will be teaming with Franklin Regional Council in September, Central Mass Regional Planning Commission in June. That meeting will be in Worcester at the new MassDEP building. I'm going in reverse chronological order. In May, we'll be in Billerica with the North Middlesex Council of Governments. And actually just yesterday, Abby and I met with the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission and talked with their brownfields team as well. And then our first roundtable will be on May 13th in Taunton, at Taunton City Hall, but working with the Southeast Regional Planning Economic Development District, SERPED. And our goals there, and the reason we're sharing this right now is because I want to give people the opportunity to save the date. You will see coming out of our office, and if you follow me on LinkedIn, you will see we'll do the individual meeting, save the dates with registration links. Those will be coming live very shortly. The opportunity here is for people to learn about brownfields resources and putting together teams to do their brownfields projects. So we will have speakers from the folks who provide resources. So MassDEP will talk about the funding that we have through our EPA grants. The EPA team will be there. And my thought is that by May, there will be more clear guidance of what the new administration is pushing forward as their priorities for brownfields. All indications are that there will be brownfields funding. I don't expect it to be at the same level that it was from the bipartisan infrastructure law, but there's been kind of information about draft bills and draft legislation that is showing favorable support of brownfields. And so I expect that we will still have brownfields. We just won't know what the dollar amounts are, but that hopefully by kind of May and June, there'll be more clear guidance. The people that we invite in the region, we work with the regional planning agencies, is I'd really want to get folks from the public sector. So lots of town planners, town administrators, economic development directors, and volunteers on local boards, as well as people from nonprofits. I want those folks to come and learn about what kind of resources are available to them. So EPA can provide grant funding, mass development, their brownfields redevelopment or remediation fund has been refinanced, and University of Connecticut offers free services as well through their technical assistance for brownfields. So the goal is to share with folks what those resources are, and you in the environmental professional community, you should please share these dates with your clients and the people that you work with that may be eligible. These are a really good opportunity to kind of learn and hear the questions that your client might have, but also other people ask questions. And there's really no such thing as bad question, because we want to make sure that everyone comes out of these meetings knowing what resources are available. And the goal is to have these meetings ahead of time so that if someone is getting lined up and queued up to be able to apply for a brownfields grant in the September to November period, that you have time to plan ahead and think about what might be next. So we will be out there and across the Commonwealth. At each of these meetings, we'll have people from our regional offices as well, so it's a chance to meet the technical experts from the wayside cleanup. But usually we'll have DRDs, regional brownfields coordinators, and some technical staff as well. And so it's a good opportunity to interact with public agency folks, MassDEP teams, and the people who provide the resources and information and support. So put these in your calendar, find one that's close to you, and please share with people that you think will benefit from this information and these resources. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave. Kathy?
Good morning, everybody. Kathy Kiley, Emergency Planning and Response Coordinator. Next slide, please, Abby. So as you know, our regional ER staff are the workhorses. They're responding 24/7 to all the notifications of any spills of oil or hazardous material. And so just wanted to present to you some of the numbers, some of the statistics on what we've seen thus far. So in FY25 to date, about 650 releases, 696 complaints. And just for reference, I've provided what we've seen for the past fiscal year, a little over 1,000 releases and complaints. And looks like we're on a similar level for this year. Whoops, I think we've lost the slides.
Sorry, I'm trying to reshare. My computer went dark for a minute. One moment. Can you see now the slides?
No. Yep, now I can.
Okay,
Could you
great.
put it in? Could you put it in slideshow though?
Yes.
Thank you.
Let's see. How's that?
I'm not seeing the slideshow.
Apologies, I'm having a few issues. One moment.
Thank you. That's great. Appreciate it, Abby.
Sorry about that.
No problem. So as I said, we're on similar level, I think, for responses for notifications and complaints. It looks like this year as well. On the left graphical presentation, just broken it down by what we're seeing in each of the regions, going left to right, Western, Central, Northeast, and Southeast. And then also by the type of notification, whether it's a 2-hour, 72-hour, or 120-day, just so you can see, as you'd expect, the bulk of what we're getting are the 2-hour notifications. Similarly, for the complaints, just broke it down by region for the year, and you can see how it's broken out across the regions. Next slide, please. So I wanted to get into a little bit more of the trends for the notifications. On the left, you'll see the in FY25, the notifications by location as well as the type. So by that, I mean, is it, and again, starting left to right, you have a roadway, a private property, commercial entity, a municipality, residential, etc. So you can see the bulk of the releases that have been coming in are the roadway. And so then just so you can see by those 2-hour roadway releases on the right, you can see a little bit more how that's been trending over the years. I think you'll see that the different colors, again, by region, blue is Western, the red is Central, yellow, Southeast, and the gray is Northeast. With the exception of that spike, it looks like in FY27 for Northeast, the overall trend in the 2-hour roadway notifications has been going down in the last 6 years. But not really sure why that spiked up last year in Northeast, but it just gives you a flavor for the types of releases that we're getting over time. And then also you can see how that proportionally how much we're seeing for the roadway versus the other types of notifications that are coming in. Next slide, please. I just wanted to give a quick update on the Marine Oil Spill Prevention and Response Program. I do want to highlight the website. If you haven't looked at it, it's a great resource. It talks a lot about the program, the various projects that are ongoing, whether it's a tug escort, some navigational aids, the geographic response plans that are out there, as well as the exercises that are done, some additional climate work that's been done that I think we've highlighted before. So it's a great resource. Also, we held an advisory committee on the oil spill advisory committee was held in early December. Those presentations and the video recording of the meeting will be posted on that MassDEP webpage by the end of the month. So again, that would be something if you're interested in, you could take a look at that and get more in depth on some of the work that's ongoing. And then lastly, I just wanted to highlight the one of the very successful programs that's done is the associated with the geographic response strategies. And DEP holds about 10 sessions across the year, 5 in the spring and 5 in the fall. And these are the first responder training and the GRS testing exercises. And right now we're just finalizing those dates with the various communities for the 5 spring sessions. Once those are set, we work on the various which exercise we're going to test. We also get work with our neighboring communities, as well as Coast Guard is always able to attend as well as a partner, and they can learn about the various equipment that we have available from our oil spill trailers. So they're very successful. The municipalities love them. And that's pretty much where we are right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy. Susan, I see that you have a question.
Thank you, Millie, for recognizing me. Kathy, thanks for that update. I just wanted to ask a question. So one of your first slides where you showed the releases or the reporting for fiscal year 25 to date, 650 releases in less than 2 months seems like a high rate and seems higher than in fiscal year 24. Am I interpreting that incorrectly?
Yes, it's our fiscal year, which is July 1st to June 30th.
Oh, okay.
June 30th. So yes, otherwise, absolutely, I would be agreeing with you. That would be a lot.
Okay, so the fiscal year 25 is a 12-month rate.
Correct.
Great.
So what we're seeing of the FY25 to date, so from July 1st to now, this is what we've seen thus far. So
thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for it's good, and I should make sure to clarify that in the future when I do this. So thank you very much.
No, it ends in June.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Hey, any other questions before we move forward and provide the mic to LSP Board's Terry Wood? No questions? Terry, if you'd be so kind to give us your report out, or a representative for the LSP Board.
Hi, Millie, it's Terry. Thank you so much. I'm happy to give a report out about what's been going on at the board in the last few months. First, I'll give an update regarding the board's disciplinary program. So about a year ago, the board had 8 open disciplinary cases. Now, all of those cases have been resolved except for 1, which is under investigation. Of the 7 that have been resolved, 4 were dismissed. 1 resulted in a 1-year license suspension, and the other 2 resulted in the LSPs agreeing to voluntarily surrender their licenses. The board also recently accepted a new complaint for investigation. The next topic is regulations. In November 2024, the board approved draft regulation amendments. Those amendments involve changes to LSP continuing education requirements and a variety of other changes. The package of proposed amendments next went for internal agency review. Those amendments are still in that agency review process. After that is done, the package will be ready for public review and comment, and we don't have any idea yet when that will happen and when they'll go out for public hearing and comment. The next update is what's going on with the LSP exam. The board's exam subcommittee recently finished amending existing questions in light of the recent MCP amendments and also drafted a bunch of brand new exam questions. Now the subcommittee is working with a psychometrician to undertake a technical review of each amended and new question for clarity and accuracy. After the technical review is done, the last step will be to undertake a cut score workshop overseen by the psychometrician to develop passing scores for the new versions of the exam. And at the end of the process, the board will have 4 new versions of the exam. We're not sure exactly when those new exams will be ready, hopefully by summer of 2025. And the last thing is the board has decided to undertake a new initiative. The LSPA recently sent the board a letter with suggestions regarding both the LSP exam and the LSP application forms. At the board's monthly meeting last week, the board decided to form a subcommittee to review the existing application forms, which haven't been changed in a long time, to see if there are a way that those forms can be streamlined to make the application process easier. And that's all I have for updates.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the advisory committee members or anyone participating this morning?
Oh, sorry. Can you see my hand?
Yes. Thank you.
I forgot how to raise my hand for a second.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say thank you for posting the minutes and agendas in such a timely fashion. It's refreshing to be able to see what was discussed in the agenda as well as, comprehensive meeting minutes. So I thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you for your great work, Terry. So appreciate it.
My pleasure. Talk to you later.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so it's our pleasure to welcome Ms. Katie Kudzma, President-elect of the LSPA. She will provide us with the LSPA report out this morning.
Hi, Millie. Thank you. So the LSPA will be continuing our environmental justice grants in 2025. We'll be providing small grants to not-for-profit environmental advocacy groups, community-based groups, environmental education organizations, and/or volunteer efforts for local projects that benefit the environment in Massachusetts communities with environmental justice populations. More details will be forthcoming this spring with grant deadlines in the summer. Our executive director search has been proceeding. We have some strong candidates and very excited about the process. It's going very well. So we'll be nearing a decision soon and announce the new executive director as soon as possible. We expect that this person would start in early May. Some of you may remember that the LSPA also sent around a member survey in November 2024 with questions about demographics, employment details, typical salaries, benefits, and reducing impediments to LSP licensure. We had a great response. Over 250 people responded, and we plan to summarize findings for our membership soon. The LSPA's all-day environmental symposium will be held on April 10th at the Sheraton in Framingham. We expect to open registration for that day-long event in early March. There are 7 available sessions. You can take up to 5 courses for credits in one day, including at least 1 for MassDEP credit. Many thanks in advance to MassDEP speakers Natalie Johnson, John Ziegler, and John Fitzgerald for presenting. We also still have space for exhibitors as well as reception sponsors. Please contact info@lspa.org if you're interested or have any questions. Thank you.
Katie. Anyone has questions or comments before we move on to the next topic? If not, Katie, thank you, and look forward to, again, supporting the LSPA at the upcoming meetings. Thanks. All right, so this next presentation is an outstanding item that the Bureau of Wayside Cleanup had in our list of items to actually correspond back to the requester, in this case, LSPA. And Greg Braun, the chief of the Risk Analysis Division within the Office of Research and Standards, is going to provide the background associated with today's presentation. And last but not least, I just want to offer that a letter went out yesterday to the LSPA under my signature to clarify the current status of the request and how we arrived at the determination. With that, Greg, if you could please provide us with your presentation.
Sure. Thank you, Millie. And good morning, everyone. As Millie mentioned, Greg Braun, I'm in the Risk Analysis Group in ORS, and I'm going to give a pretty cursorial review of sort of what's been done with regards to the TCE toxicity. In November 2023, the Technical Practices Committee of the LSPA submitted a white paper to Wayside Cleanup and ORS sort of requesting reconsideration of some of the toxicological information. Next slide, please. So as most of you are aware, the 2011 IRIS reference concentration is currently being used for the toxicity assessments based on immunotox and congenital heart defects. And because of that, the congenital heart defect is considered a serious effect. The imminent hazard value for TCE has been set at an hazard index of 1. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, the 2023 LSPA Practices Committee, Technical Practices Committee, they submitted their white paper, which is fairly thorough, and Tom Angus and the toxicology group spent some time going through their comments and positions and papers. Their argument is basically that the congenital heart defect endpoint should no longer be considered because a study that was published in 2019, the DeSoso et al. Study, raised a number of questions about the congenital heart defect endpoint. And the white paper also argued that the 2020 TSCA risk review didn't select congenital heart defects as a point of departure. If you drop the congenital heart defect endpoint in the assessment for TCE, it would change the imminent hazard value to 10 as opposed to 1, so much less conservative. Next slide, please. So the current reference concentration of 2 was derived using two values. This was the impacts on the thyroid from a study from 2009, Keel et al., and the congenital heart defects, which was reported in a paper by Johnson et al. In 2003. And I should note here that the 2003 Johnson paper has been somewhat contentious. There's been some methodological questions asked, and the Technical Practices Committee brought some of these issues up in their white paper. But the consensus is generally that it still is a real endpoint to take into consideration for the toxicity of this particular chemical. Next slide, please. So in 2020, EPA did an evaluation of selection of the point of departure, and basically they stuck with the immunological endpoint of the reduced thyroid weight from the Kiel study. However, they also concluded that the TCE exposure is still supports consideration of the fetal cardiac endpoint as being scientifically valid. So there's still, while there's some acknowledgement that the method or the Johnson paper has some limitations, the EPA in 2020 basically determined that it was still an endpoint that should be considered in the evaluation of the toxicity of TCE. Next slide, please. So as it stands, for ORS, and I think the Bureau as well, while we agree and acknowledge there is some uncertainty with the 2003 Johnson study, we think there's sufficient evidence to continue to use the congenital heart defect endpoint to assess the toxicity of TCE and keep the hazard index for TCE at 1, because we do believe this cardiac malformation defects are a significant or serious endpoint. Next slide. Okay. Yes. So I should point out here that this work was done by the toxicity program or division, and you certainly can reach out to Tom Angus or Sandy Baird. Neither of them were available today, so they could better answer technical questions about the assessment and the LSPA's white paper. But I will attempt to answer any questions that people might have at this point in time.
Thank you, Greg.
Sure.
MassDEP will be posting the letter that we issued yesterday alongside with the TCE ORS memo. And also we reaffirmed the Q&A, the 2014 Q&A that's posted already on the website. That trio of information will be made available on our Bureau of Voice Cleanup webpage. Lisa.
Thanks, and thank you, Greg, for discussing this at this meeting. I know this is something we've been waiting to hear for a while now, so we appreciate it. I guess 2 quick questions. One is, am I correct in understanding that ORS did not perform their own sort of reanalysis and relied mostly on EPA's 2020 analysis to render this decision, or did they sort of undertake their own, toxicity reassessment?
No, good question. There was some, you'd have to talk to Tom and Sandy to get the specifics of the depth to which they reviewed these other papers, such as the DeSoso paper, but I know that was part of their assessment. So yes, they did more than sort of a surface assessment of the white paper. They dug into the background publications and document and studies as well.
Okay, and then the second question, a little bit, I know, out of the norm here, but in light of the fact that everyone, including EPA and ORS, acknowledges that there definitely are some questions about the certainty of the study upon which the congenital heart defect value relies. I think everyone's in agreement, it's not the best, most robust, replicated study that's out there. Would DEP maybe consider adding an additional factor to account for that, the confidence in the study, to maybe not go all the way up to 10, but sort of something in between that takes into consideration maybe some of the technical deficits that were articulated in the white paper. So I'm just throwing that out there. I don't expect you to necessarily give a response, but just food for thought.
It's an
We'll take that into
interesting concept.
advisement. Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
No, I was gonna say it's an interesting concept. We haven't necessarily, I don't think anyone in the talks program has considered that, but I can certainly bring that back to them to deliberate. Thanks.
And Lisa, we'll certainly follow up on that question, either through an email communication or report back at the next advisory committee meeting.
Thank you.
I just, if I just jump in quickly, if I may, Millie, just to be clear, the existing written statement, though, that is about to be issued or has issued, just to clarify, clearly stands. Obviously, folks here are thinking about studies and reviewing questions, thinking about these things all the time. But again, the official statement of the agency is in the written document.
Correct.
And we will be posting all that information following this meeting. Thank you, Luke. Okay, thank you, Greg. I appreciate.
So if you have further questions, you can reach out to me or to Tom Angus or Sandy Baird in the talks group. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so today we will be devoting a little bit of time on reviewing the historical context to where we are today, in addition to also highlighting substantive items of importance within the draft AUL guidance that we've been working on for a very long time. And I'm just want to express my sincere appreciation to every single person that had anything to do with this particular interim guidance on implementing activity use limitations, and which will be from here on out referenced as AUL guidance. And as you all know, this particular document was way back in the way back. It goes back, harkens back to the 2010 era. And the primary goal of this document was to basically update guidance and make provide additional context to stay inconsistent with the MCP. So many comments were sent, I would say, in the hundreds of comments from the inception of this review process and comment process. And again, the big takeaway at that moment in time was helping identify issues that really needed more discussion, more dialogue, and further clarity, so that activity use limitations that were created and also filed would be representative of the protectiveness that we wanted to see at MCP sites. The AUL work group also remained steadfast in its work with robust incorporation of basically a lot of dedicated time and energy and effort during the 2011 era, the 2014 era, and again, subsequent years, again, with the goal of aligning all of the commentary and ensuring that we have helpful guidance that makes for valid and representative instruments that, again, are protective of human health and the environment. So before we get started, I just wanted to express, again, my sincere appreciation. This is a long time coming. A lot of energy and effort, a lot of dialogue, both internally within the DEP, Bureau of Waste Site Cleanup staff and auditors, and anybody who actually has anything to do with the review and comment and engagement on activity use limitations, as well as the external public and stakeholders. A special appreciation also to the LSPA and NIOP for their robust thoughts and comments, and many others that actually weighed in to make what I believe is a guidance document that hopefully provides that instrument, that information and that guidance to make these AULs instruments strong. I also want to say thank you to our work group chairperson, Peggy Shaw, for leading us into a document that, again, we look forward to wrapping up very soon, and hopefully sets the foundation for AULs that are compliant and helpful and protective. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ken Mara, who will introduce the topic, and then Peggy will provide us with clarity on where we landed on all of the various issues that came to light during our process of seeking information and comment. So with that, thank you. Ken?
Oh, can you go back to the first slide, Abby? Yeah. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Ken Mara from the Policy Division in Boston. It's been, as Millie said, it's been a long time since we've dug into any details on AULs, going back to 2011. So for the benefit of everyone, especially those that weren't around in 2011, or those that aren't as familiar with AULs as those on the work group, I'm going to give a brief refresher for the benefit of all of us on a few key points about AULs. Okay, now next slide. The three main purposes of AULs are first, to provide notice to future property owners about future site uses and activities that are consistent or inconsistent with maintaining no significant risk. Secondly, it specifies owner obligations to meet AUL objectives, like make sure you inspect and maintain the engineered barrier. And third, to indicate the location of residual contamination at a property. Next slide. As far as where AULs fit in the site closure scheme of things, once all the risk standards are met and the closure requirements are met, only three things can happen: a permanent solution with no conditions, permanent solution with conditions, or a temporary solution. And AULs are a subset of permanent solutions with conditions. In 2014, we added other conditions to include best management practices for gardening and anthropogenic background and those types of things, but that's not an AUL condition. But what we're focused on today is the AUL piece itself. To give a sense of scale, next slide, please. To give a sense of scale, you can see that the permanent solutions with no conditions are by far the majority of the site cleanup endpoints that we've received. Permanent solutions with conditions are a small fraction of that, and temporary solutions are an even smaller fraction of that. To break out the AULs specifically, next slide, please. Right now, we're running at about 80 or so AULs per year, or about 8% of all permanent solutions that come in are permanent solutions with AULs. Next slide, please. So yeah, the AULs are a key element in any permanent solution, especially when you think about things like we have a statute that says we must go to background where feasible. Well, where it's not feasible, the use of AULs is one of the mechanisms to still reach a closure endpoint. They're most commonly used to control future exposures to high soil contamination levels, in particular when a child's frequency or intensity of use is considered to be high. As John Fitzgerald likes to say, he asked the question, can a child eat the soil anywhere at a site from 0 to 15 feet deep and still be at a condition of NSR? And if no, you need an AUL. That's John's take on this. But next slide. To give a little more detail on the triggers for an AUL, this is not all inclusive. You absolutely need to read the guidance document itself for all the details on this. But a condition of NSR would exist for the current use, except it does not exist for any use, including excavation and relocation of soils 0 to 15 feet deep. Second, the soil greater than 15 feet deep exceeds Method 3 sealing limits, or what used to be called UCLs. Third, either passive or active exposure pathway mitigation measures are required to maintain a condition of no significant risk. And fourth, a private well that is no longer providing drinking water, but is not abandoned and is still maintained for non-potable uses like irrigation. And then finally, NAPL with microscale mobility remains at the site at any depth. That's a subject of a whole other guidance document on the NAPL, which is a whole different topic. But the devil is in the details here. And for the details on the current guidance document that's about to go final, I'm going to turn it over to Peggy Shaw, the work group leader. So Peggy's there.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry. I'm just getting my my audio. Thanks, Ken. For anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Peggy Shaw. I chaired the AUL work group for quite a long time, and I currently manage the current revisions and finalizing the document. Next slide, please. So, as you know, the interim guidance was released last March 2024. We accepted comments through June 5th. This was the third public review draft published, the first being in 2010, the second in 2014. The interim guidance incorporated feedback we received on prior drafts, reg changes, in particular the 2024, excuse me, the 2024 MCP amendments, and also included other clarifications based on program experience. So the final AUL guidance, soon to be published, addresses the comments received on the 2024 interim guidance. Next slide, please. So as expected, and was very encouraging, the comments received on this third draft were not as substantial as prior drafts. Far fewer comments, and many were more requesting clarifications and edits more than substantive comments. Many of the comments prompted additional clarifications to language, but not policy changes. Although the revisions were editorial, many of the revisions were editorial in nature, there were a few more substantive revisions, and I'll address those in the next few slides. We do plan to post all the comments along with the summary of how we responded to the comments on our webpage. And of course, when the guidance is final, we'll post that as well. Next slide, please. The first revision that I'll discuss is the language we added about AULs at mixed-use properties. This was new language in the interim guidance, and it was intended to address AULs that are implemented at disposal sites where vapor intrusion is an issue, and the AUL distinguishes between zones. And the most obvious example of that would be this commercial use on the ground floor and residential use on the upper floors. We've seen an uptick in these type of AULs in recent years, and with the increase in mixed-use developments in the Commonwealth, we expect to see more in the future. So we wanted to add this discussion to the guidance to draw attention to the concerns with these type of AULs. In particular, the difficulty predicting and controlling movement of vapors between floors or zones of the building, and challenges ensuring that there are no impacts to the most sensitive receptors. We also noted in the draft language the concern of potentially creating new preferential pathways during future building renovations. The comments we received argued that discouraging mixed-use AULs is overly restrictive, and noted that indoor air sampling can demonstrate a condition of no significant risk at all exposure points under current conditions, and concerns about future conditions such as obligations necessary to address future building modifications can be incorporated into the AUL. So in the final guidance, we revised the mixed-use paragraph based on this feedback, and also we wanted to better ensure that we remain consistent with the vapor intrusion guidance. In redrafting, we kind of shifted the tone of the language to emphasize the requirement that when implementing a mixed-use AUL, a condition of no significant risk must be met for each distinct current use and receptor. And we also emphasize the need for the AUL to include necessary obligations and conditions to ensure that no significant risk will be maintained in the future, such as maintaining systems and building elements, and a requirement that an LSP evaluate any future building modifications to ensure no new preferential pathways are created. As I said, the redrafted language is intended to be consistent with the policy set out in the vapor intrusion guidance. And in this subsection, we direct the reader to look to the VI guidance for relevant procedures on how to implement these. As we see more mixed-use AULs, we may see trends in audit violations, and at that point, we'll be able to identify where and if additional guidance will be appropriate to help with compliance in the future. Next slide, please. Okay, so this particular revision is only a clarification, but I think as we all know, wording can be misinterpreted. So this is related to table 2-1, and this is a table that's in section 2 of the guidance, which is a risk characterization discussion. Risk characterization as it relates to AULs, obviously. The table is a cheat sheet that summarizes examples of common exposure assumptions associated with common conditions and the typical limitations or obligations that may be included in the AUL for that particular scenario. This table is intended to be read alongside the guidance document and not create new policy. So the table includes examples for the different media, and we received comments on our example, the example we have for the subslab soil gas example. I'm just thinking this would have been a good example to have like the red line strike up for what we did to explain it, but I'll do my best here. Hopefully I'm crystal clear. So the condition, the common condition in the table that for this example was VOCs VOCs are present in subslab soil gas. There are no current impacts to indoor air. In the exposure assumption, building conditions include building slab are maintained to prevent migration of VOCs. And then we list some AUL limitations and obligations. So the comments we received on this example were that the wording of this example implied that AULs would be required whenever there are detectable levels of VOCs beneath the slab. So the language in this table is brief by necessity because it's a one-page table, but we did agree that the language in this particular example was misleading. So we revised the example to describe a scenario where VOCs are present in subslab soil gas and currently present no significant risk, but we had additional language, but estimated EPCs demonstrated that current levels may not meet no significant risk in the future. And that's a scenario that would require an AUL. And I want to emphasize again that we don't intend to create new policy with this table. Is meant to be read alongside the rest of section 2 of the guidance, but also anything related to vapor intrusion in the AUL guidance is meant to be consistent with the vapor intrusion guidance. We're not creating many policies about that topic in the AUL guidance. Next slide, please. So this is definitely more editorial and a clarification, but I wanted to mention it here. The MCP describes several scenarios in 40.1012 subsection 3 and 40.1013, where an AUL is not required by the MCP, but may be implemented voluntarily by the property owner to provide notice of residual contamination. We received a comment that voiced concern that including a discussion about this in the guidance would encourage the implementation of voluntary AULs as a standard practice and could even be viewed as an expectation. So the MCP allows for the use of the 1075 form to provide optional notice of residual contamination when the MCP doesn't require such notice. And people do exercise this option. So we believe that it's appropriate to include guidance on this topic. However, we did add additional language to emphasize that implementing an AUL in this scenario most certainly is not an expectation. And we also emphasize that it's just one of many options that are available to provide such notice. And as seen in the slide, section 1.6 in the guidance does provide some examples of alternatives to providing optional notice of residual contamination when it's not required by the MCP. Next slide, please. So this is very specific. It's a third draft, so we're really getting into the weeds. But this particular requirement has generated a lot of misunderstandings. So we wanted to make a clarification about it. The MCP requires a sketch plan be attached to the AUL as Exhibit B that depicts the AUL area in relation to the boundaries of the disposal site. We received a couple of suggestions that we revise this week, the language in the guidance to state that it is not required that the AUL sketch plan identify disposal site boundaries on neighboring non-owned properties, that it should be limited to the property where the AUL is located. We revised the language to more clearly state that the AUL sketch plans show the AUL area in relation to the disposal site boundary as they exist within the property boundaries. So, obviously, information about the site boundaries is important to the reader, and this information, along with a whole lot of other information that isn't in the AUL about the disposal site, can be found in the site files. So we concur that the disposal site boundaries delineated in sketch plans, in AUL sketch plans, may be limited to the subject parcel. Next slide, please. So next steps, obviously, as we've already noted, we're finalizing and releasing the AUL guidance. And as I already noted, that'll be available on the webpage, and along with the comments and our summary responses to the comments. We will be looking at the existing Q&As on AULs and updating as needed. And we'll also look at developing new AULs related to AULs as appropriate. And finally, we'll work with the LSPA on setting up an AUL training session, probably later in the calendar year. And that's about it. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Peggy. And again, we want to note that Peggy is providing us with a high-level overview that basically captures the most salient, potentially controversial or otherwise points that warranted clarification. And this has really been a long journey with a lot of commentary in MassDEP. When possible, the Bureau of Wayside Cleanup has acknowledged and incorporated stakeholder comments to facilitate more information and more robust guidance, especially in those areas that could be confusing. Our presentation today, again, is not meant to provide training, but rather just close the loop on the observations that we've had over the years regarding the key salient topics that warranted more conversation. And again, I want to underscore Peggy's comment that some of these areas really rely upon other intertwined policies and guidance. So, for example, the vapor intrusion guidance and any other guidance documents that actually have more prominent salient role when it comes to the evaluation of the exposure pathway. So more to come, and we look forward perhaps to reconstituting all the voices from the past work groups so that we can create, again, a training session in the near future that has all of the dimensions of information and areas of concern, question, confusion, so we can actually bring forth more light onto these topics. So again, thank you. And Lisa.
I'm sorry.
No, we appreciate it. This is what it's about, and we're very grateful for your engagement. We really are.
I guess a couple quick questions, Peggy. And I know this wasn't like an all inclusive presentation, so I guess there are more and more sites where things like POETs are becoming pretty common for private drinking water wells, with PFAS being, a major driver of that. And so, I know that there have been some additions because that was something that was really lacking in the previous AUL guidance, sort of like, well, if someone has a POET, what kind of things do you need to ensure in terms of obligations and conditions for that well. So I'm presuming that, has been adequately addressed in this version. I know we had some comments on that before.
Yeah, I don't know. We don't go into too much detail. I think the thought is we can, we don't need to address everything in this guidance. We talked about doing Q&As and different, providing guidance in different ways. I think the AUL guidance is just getting so dense with information. So, and providing on, for example, like the vapor intrusion stuff, we really don't want to get into too much detail there. We rely on the vapor intrusion guidance to give that guidance. Just off the top of my head, I don't think we made too many revisions in that area. But as we need to develop new guidance, we will, whether it's, with it, not necessarily in the AUL guidance, but someplace, whether it's a Q&A or elsewhere.
So I was going to offer that this could be a Q&A question insofar as a poet is there to protect public health and the environment, especially maintain a condition of no significant risk. And I just don't want to lose sight of our goal here that Ken basically described in the primer to Peggy's presentation, which is these are instruments that actually are designed, by design, mean to alert current and foreseeable future owners, receptors, that there is contamination, and therefore MassDEP is really not in the business of dictating how an AUL reads, but rather the AUL should contain enough information to give that insight regarding the premise and the actual spirit of the permanent solution with conditions. The condition being there's an AUL, and the AUL is going to describe what's in play to impart protectiveness. But again, we're taking that question, Lisa, into advisement and maybe turning that question into a Q&A item, which we are collecting right now. So that will be one of the Q&A questions regarding, basically just, how do poets, for example, come to be acknowledged through an AUL,
Okay. And then just along those lines too, again, back with private drinking water supplies, there are plenty of situations out right now where people have eliminated cross connections for potable water supply. They have hooked into public water supply. You can do a risk assessment showing that irrigation doesn't pose a risk. And in fact, at some of those abandoned wells, you can also show that they're meeting GW1 standards and drinking water. So I guess, does the guidance talk about the scenario where you actually also don't have a risk, even if someone were, it meets all of the check boxes and it doesn't pose a risk for any use, it's just not connected as a private water supply? I think that's been an area of confusion. And I personally have gotten mixed feedback from DEP on what to do in those scenarios. But I guess going back to the intent of the AUL, it's supposed to prevent exposures and activities that could pose a significant risk. So if you're not in that scenario, I'm presuming that you don't need an AUL.
I would argue yes. And go ahead, Peggy. I have my.
I was just going to say that specific example isn't addressed in the AUL guidance. That actually sounds like a great topic for a Q&A.
Yes, because remember, the burden of proof is really in the actual permanent solution that you're filing. So that's where all that information goes. Basically being able to ascertain and demonstrate in a deliverable that's submitted to the DEP, and this is why it's a permanent solution without conditions. And here is my argument. That's what the auditor receives. That's what the auditor reviews. That's what's being evaluated. So not necessarily do you need to move forward with an AUL if you are basically talking about the line of evidence and the body of work that's contained in prior phases before you actually file the permanent solution. But as Peggy stated, this was discussed in the actual guidance, and we can definitely highlight it in a Q&A.
And just one final comment on the guidance. It's a big document, and it's impossible to address every scenario that comes up. But it doesn't mean we won't address it if there are issues that folks think we should address. Q&As are a great place to do it, because we obviously want to give the guidance where it's necessary.
Great. Any additional questions? And thank you, Lisa, for those important questions that you asked. Anything else on AULs? And we are delighted and excited to get this rolled out. As Peggy stated, also provide necessary Q&As and also the training. So stay tuned for that. And soon as we finalize and release the document, we will be sending it out via blast. Ken Mara will take care of that. So thank you for many, many, many years and many MCP revisions. And hopefully our last revision, the 2024 MCP revision, just set in motion this moment. So thanks to everyone who has contributed countless hours to getting us to this point. We're very appreciative. Next. Okay, Ken, why don't you give us a short summary of where we are with the COM25 policy, please?
Yeah, you can go to the next slide, please, Abby. Yeah, some of you may notice that this slide looks almost identical to the slide I showed at the last advisory committee meeting, but there's one major change. The very first bullet now says it's under review by the commissioner's office. Last time it was under review by senior staff. Lots of stuff has happened behind the scenes, internal gyrations, legally and technical, internally with this document. The plan is that we are going to put it out for public comment, hopefully very soon, because I understand the commissioner's office should be almost done with it any day. Once again, this policy allows the reuse of contaminated soil at other 21E sites at levels greater than what COM15 would allow, which is a tricky concept given we have the requirement to go to background. But one of the major acceptance requirements is that it has to involve the achievement of a permanent solution, so a condition of no significant risk. There's nothing stopping people bringing in clean soil, but the message is going to be that any soil that comes into any of these sites has to meet the same level of screening as if it's coming from a contaminated site. There's also a very large element of this that is public involvement related. That is a key feature of how these things are going to be how these things are going to work. The 250,000 minimum is a number that is just there for public comment. Some people think that number is too low. Some people think it's too high. But for now, we're just going to throw that out there for public comment. But like I said, lots has happened behind the scenes since we last met, and the document really should be final any day. And as far as a public comment draft, and that will be sent out and posted for your comments. So that's about all I have to say on that, unless anyone has any questions.
Thank you. Please stay tuned. We are also contemplating providing a public meeting to support the rollout for public commentary and ensuring that there is transparency and dialogue around the finalization of the COM25 soil policy. So thank you very much and stay tuned on this one. Next. Okay, so we are at the Q&A wrap-up point here. I look forward to having you express any questions, comments, concerns as we soon approach a wrap-up stage for this particular advisory committee meeting. And I appreciate the many people that actually took the time this morning to participate virtually on this particular meeting. So I don't know if Abby or Amita, you see any hands?
There are no questions in the chat, Millie.
Okay. So why don't we go into the next slide, because I do have a question for the advisory committee and the public at large here. So we will be holding our next office hours meeting on March 20. But the question here lies with regards to the Wayside Cleanup Advisory Committee that's coming up and currently posted for 5/22, which is a Thursday, and it precedes Memorial Day weekend. So we can either stay the course or consider moving the meeting to the 28th. So that's just a question we have. And secondly, hybrid, we are inclined to moving forward into a hybrid format. So that would be a combination of in-person at 100 Cambridge in Boston, and also providing opportunity for virtual participation. So just some thoughts here. And I see Jane, you raised your hand.
Hey, Millie. We had a question. We were wondering when we might expect the next chapters of the risk guidance. Obviously, we've seen the first two sections, and I think we're primarily waiting for the method 3 chapter and then any appendices.
Yes. So
thanks, Millie.
Yeah, of course, Jane. So Greg, I know that we have a contractor on board that's working, or 120-dayer who's working on these chapters, and we're very close. But that is a really dense chapter that we've been working on. I don't know, Ken or Greg, if you have an update since last week when we talked a little bit about this.
I can paint sort of a broad picture, Jane and others, sort of where this is. So there's total of 17 chapters. I think we've shared 10 of them with the exterior world. The real hiccup now is the method 3 chapter, or chapter 11. It's about 75 pages, and it's going through an internal review in ORS, which is somewhat painful because there's a lot of other competing priorities, if you will. We're planning 4 eco risk chapters. One of them is under an internal review. That's the wetland eco risk. The other 3 are under development, and Nancy Bettinger is helping us write those chapters. She's on a 120-day posting, as Millie mentioned. We do have 2 chapters we could circulate, and there are a few appendices that are probably ready for external review. So, I mean, originally I had hoped to put these in sort of, how to put them, discrete packages as a group or clusters. But I think given the difficulty with the review of chapter 11 in particular, the method 3 chapter, and potentially the first eco risk chapter, I'm considering just circulating stuff a little more hodgepodge at this point, because if I wait much longer, I don't want this to lose entropy, if you will, because we put a lot of work into it, and I appreciate the feedback that we have gotten thus far from LSPs and others who've taken the time. So I appreciate that. It's helpful. I should also mention we have about 30 appendices, which is complicating the picture a bit. And it's some of those appendices are technical updates, so they're sort of done and dusted. But about half of them are either drafted and internally reviewed, or in different states of construction, if you will. So it's a hodgepodge, I guess, at this point. I can certainly talk with Millie about sort of thinking about when to share some subset of what's available in the near future, so people have some time to chew through some of it. Because I mean, we've been sort of using a 90-day turnaround. I think that seems to work fairly well for most folks. And I think we're going to have at least 2 more releases, if you will, of draft chapters. That's sort of the quick elevator pitch on where that's at.
Yeah. No, that's great, Greg. And Jane, I guess I'll certainly meet with Greg shortly after this meeting and maybe just developing a crosswalk so we don't lose sight of what's been turned over for review, and ensure that we have a calendar, electronic calendar, to kind of see, just track these particular incoming comments, the review, the result of the review. So what we can, I guess we're just asking for patience and understanding relative to trying to, rather than provide you with everything like in a bow and here it is from start to finish. I mean, we just want to at least, it's either wait and get everything, or we can do this transect in a manner that keeps it going, and at least maybe at the end we can kind of tie in all the pieces together and do a overview. How do our comments kind of tie in from start to finish? So I'm inclined to sort of do this on a rolling basis, if that works for the advisory committee and LSPA and others that have thus far provided us with comments. So thoughts, Lisa, welcome. Let me know what you think.
I would not vote for hodgepodge release, because it's really hard to review things, especially like kind of out of order, because things build on each other. So I would say, if it would be fine if you wanted to release maybe like that whole method 3 chapter as its own piece, but I would definitely recommend the eco chapters be released together. So I don't think the eco and the human health have to wait for each other. But I mean, I think the method 3 chapter on its own, that would be okay, because you had all the previous chapters that built upon when that's done. But the eco, it's because it's so integrated and there could be multiple types of habitats that you're dealing with as part of an eco risk assessment. I think that would be really cumbersome to release in separate pieces. And then when we're making the comments, we'd have to like go back to what did we say in this previous thing. And I just think it would be more efficient to not break it up too much. I mean, that's just my
You
opinion.
agree, which is why I haven't done that yet, Lisa. It is a bit like herding cats at this point. And, I would say, in addition to just the chapters, ideally, we would roll out the chapters with all the appendices complete and attached. And I'm not sure that we could do that. There's maybe a couple chapters that we could do, but I see what you're saying, and I agree. It can be difficult to review material in that sort of hodgepodge format, which is part of the reason why I've resisted doing it. However, it's taken so long, particularly the method 3 chapter, that I feel like I may have to. That's why I'm considering it, just to keep the ball rolling, if you will. Did you have a question, Wendy?
Hi, I just wanted to amplify what Lisa was saying. I needed to think about it a bit, and I think the LSPA reviewers are going to find it to be challenging for all the reasons Lisa said. So I just pretty much want to repeat that. I think if they came out of order, if the eco risk came first, I think that would be okay. Not wait to do chapter 11 and then the eco risk. If the eco risk chapters and appendices are all ready to go, I think that's fine. But because of the kind of cumulative aspect of the eco risk, and I can't weigh in on the appendices. If it would be okay to release the new guidance without some appendices, I mean, I guess that's better than not having them. I mean, and these are going to be. We're definitely going to want 90 days for review. These are going to be hefty. And yeah, I think sort of the long game would benefit from not having them released kind of piecemeal.
Yeah. So here's what we'll do. I'll meet with Greg. We'll look at the realistic schedule. We also have some additional priorities that we incorporated into our menu of things that we're asking ORS to do, for example, imminent hazards and other things. So maybe we'll just reconfigure our request list and solidify the calendar and separate the human health from the eco, for example, and supplement it with the necessary appendices and roll those out. So I just need to get together with Greg and reconfigure our wish list that we currently have in with ORS as requests for services and see if we can expedite this, get this going. The 90 days are important. This is a big one. We really need to catch up a lot of the risk assessment guidance with the current science. So how about if we take this as an action item and then stay tuned, never mind with the advisory committee, but also LSPA and others that are have provided us exemplary review and commentary on the hard science of risk assessment. So we'll get back to you with a calendar, with a schedule, and what you should be expecting within the next few weeks.
Thanks, Millie. That's terrific. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you. So that sounds great. I wanted to let you know. So originally on the calendar, the Wayside Cleanup Advisory Committee was posted for the 15th. We had an internal conflict. We bumped it to the 22nd. We recognized that Memorial Day weekend is on the 26th, and having a meeting, obviously, right smack in the middle of summertime, the first time away with family and friends might not be ideal. So why don't then we just pivot back to May 15th for the advisory committee meeting? And that way we can hold it at MassDEP offices on Cambridge Center, Boston. We can have that meeting and also provide some hybrid access to the meetings. So if that's acceptable to the advisory committee, we'll move forward and reserve the room. It sounds good. Okay. Michelle?
Yep, that sounds
Sorry,
fine.
Millie, did you say you're going to move back to the 15th rather than the 22nd?
So we heard from some advisory committee members that the 22nd was too close to the Memorial Day weekend. So I just want to take advisement. We're happy to hold it on the 15th, the 22nd, the 28th. We're flexible. We just want to make sure that it works for the advisory committee members. And if you want to get back to us via email, I'm, again, happy to accommodate for folks what works for them as well.
Either the 15th or the 22nd works. I don't think the Thursday morning before Memorial Day weekend should be a problem for people, even if they head out of town Thursday. But that's me. I'm just one member, so either date is fine.
Okay.
Linda Siegel responding. I agree with Michelle.
On the 22nd?
Yes. Or the
Okay.
15th. I think, her rationale makes sense to me.
I personally would prefer the 15th, but I could, maybe make it work.
Okay. All right. Anybody else with regards to thoughts and comments, 15th or the 22nd? So how about if we just, I'll take this back and work with our facilities manager and see which of those days the room is available, and we'll work with whatever availability. But we do want to have an in-person meeting. And again, maybe the 15th might work. That way folks that are thinking about going somewhere else, might be able to actually make the meeting on the 15th. And that way it does not impact your travel plans on the 22nd. So stay tuned on the 15th or the 22nd. Fantastic. Well, anybody else, and again, we thank you so much for all the support that MassDEP received from you. Clearly working hard to monitor our situation. This was actually a beautiful day. We actually got together at Castle Island and learned a lot about the history. That was really great. So thanks to our friends at DCR. This is your BWSC Boston team, and we're just so grateful to be of service. I have to tell you, as a public servant, it's a privilege to work for you. And every day we wake up, just like you in the private sector, you know, we really work hard. We really, truly do our best. We really try to engage. And our job is to ensure that there's protection of human health and the environment, something that we take to heart and we take very seriously. So again, thank you. And I look forward to seeing some of you very soon at the EBC and the LSPA engagements. And know that we're here to support you and your great work. Thank you to all. Thank you to the practice. Thank you to the association and the board. It's a privilege to serve. And I wish you a wonderful day.
Thanks, Millie.
Thanks, Millie.
Everybody.
Take care.
Thank you.